to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. A power outage, poor calls on the field, and no Daniel Gazdag. The Philadelphia Union still find a way to win against Queretaro by a score of 2-1, thanks to late heroics by Philadelphia's own Chris Donovan. And that victory now sets up the Union in a semifinals match against Inter Miami and Lionel Messi this Tuesday at 7 p.m. Yes, a 7 p.m. kickoff. Well, joining the podcast for the very first time to help recap Friday night's match and looking ahead of Tuesday's match is Jose Nunez and Dave Miller, 2/3 of the Across the Pitch podcast. How you guys doing?
Doing all right. Who's Mike, Dave? I don't even know who Mike is anymore.
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, Todd. I mean, again, it's a game like no other that we've really experienced in the history of the Union, or the time that I've spent following the Union and watching the Union play. I mean, not only to be in a competition as unique as this in the semi-finals, but to play, Lionel Messi and, being a game away from hosting a final, which the Union should have probably hosted last year. Then the MLS Cup, so I mean, it's exciting, and I'm really looking forward to Tuesday night.
Jokes aside, I'm doing well, Todd. I appreciate you having us both here. When I pitched it to the other two guys, the three of us in our little group chat, Mike was absolutely bummed that he couldn't make it. So we certainly miss him. He obviously makes our show what it is, which is super exciting when he gets on. I think when David and I have to play rock, paper, scissors to who's going to host or who's going to do what, I always sort of just, cry inside a little bit. So it's a tough job, but really interesting. I think this Tuesday is going to be very much unlike any other game we've ever seen at Subaru Park, not just because of the gravity of it, but who's coming to town, which is still weird to say that Messi will be in Chester, right? That's such an odd thing.
Yeah, it's super weird, especially where, look, it looked like we potentially weren't going to have Messi here in Philadelphia this season due to us already playing Inter Miami at home. And now, obviously, both teams have made it to the semifinals in League's Cup, and here comes Messi in town. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. 8 goals, I believe, already in League's Cup. I mean, it's insane what this guy has been able to do in his short amount of time with Miami. Completely changed that team around. And again, don't want to spend too much time talking about that right now because I'm sure we'll get into that here in a bit. But like I always do on the show, for people that are brand new, have never been on the podcast before, I like to ask them 2 simple questions. 1, how did you get involved with soccer? And 2, how did you become a Union fan? Or I guess in your guys' case, how did you get into covering the Union? So I'll go ahead and start with you first, Jose.
How did I get started with soccer? Gosh, I think it certainly has to do with the fact that I was born in South America and lived in Bolivia for 14 years before moving to the States. And, you live in South America, whether you're in a country like Brazil or as poor at soccer as, Bolivia is, you're still born and thrown into the crib with a soccer ball in it. So all throughout my life, I've sort of kept up with soccer. For a little while, it wasn't my favorite sport, but nonetheless, it's something that I always followed and enjoyed. Union-wise, I was always intrigued about, this whole idea of having a soccer team in Philadelphia, and sort of, started picking up more about the MLS. And when the announcement came through that, the Philadelphia Union were finally going to happen after the Sons of Ben sort of willed it into existence, it was so awesome to see. And it's unbelievable to kind of think about the things that we witnessed, right? The first game at the Link, the El Seno game, and all in between with some faces that we never thought would be part. Jim Curtin joining the Union at Chicky and Pete's, Freddie Adu being one of our, star players, the Emboli debacle that signing was. So covering wise, I think I've said it many times across different podcasts, so I apologize if it's, me repeating, but I sort of barged my way into the Across the Pitch show. I was very much a listener that would comment every single week, and ultimately messaged Mike and Dave and said, hey, I think I can add some more to this. Do you guys mind just, tossing me in there for one episode? And as, Dave was sick or Mike was sick and needed another person, I would sort of fill in. And ultimately this season, I sort of took on officially the third rotating chair and officially made it my own. So it's been a lot of fun.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, of course. I mean, for me, born in England, so being a football fan, over here it's either a football fan or a rugby fan. So for me, I've grown up with football. My dad's a big football fan, and I started watching my team, Gillingham, which probably isn't as well known in the States. We're currently playing in League Two, so I went to my first game when I was like 2 years old. And funnily enough, obviously Jose is a well documented Manchester City fan. I was born around, don't know if you know about this, Todd, the famous 1999 Division Two playoff final where Gillingham played Man City and were 2-0 up in stoppage time. Man City scored twice and in stoppage time and won the penalty shootout, which, had Gillingham hung on that day, things could have been very, very different. Because I remember one of the key talk points around me being born, my dad was like, if my mum went to labour, it was like, I just want to go there, see the team walk out at Wembley Stadium, and then I'll come straight back home. I just want to see the team walk out because it was such a big occasion. So yeah, I've been a Gills fan pretty much since I was born. I've been working with the club now for over 5 years. As Jose and Mike know, football takes up, or soccer for you guys consumes up a lot of my life. And in regards to the Union, probably started watching them around COVID time. I'd always follow the results and I'd try and watch the occasional game if it was on TV. Obviously over here, the 5-hour difference is quite difficult, but with the Union, I've really got into it over COVID. I probably, the Leagues Cup being on when it was during COVID, and not the Leagues Cup, sorry, the MLS's back cup, sorry, when it was on during COVID, was such a good distraction, really. So I think there wasn't much football or soccer on at the time. There wasn't actually much sport in general. So you could actually sit down and watch all the games. And, having my roots to Philadelphia and Philadelphia sports, the Eagles, the Sixers, the Union, I was able to properly, delve in and watch every Union game, became properly invested and, watch the team, win the Supporters' Shield later that year in 2020. And around the same time, I started writing for AET Birds / AET Sports. And after a while, me and Mike just sort of, we were speaking about watching the Union games together. We discussed like the games whenever they were on. And in the end, we spoke to the guys above us at the website, and they just suggested, why don't you guys start a podcast and start writing about the team? And it's somewhat elevated from there. Now, of course, we've got our press access, and it's been a very, very fun journey. And hopefully, there's just that one thing missing, which is actually a proper cup, a proper trophy, and hopefully we can get it in the next week or so, or come, I think it's November time, I think the MLS Cup or the playoffs. So I think
December 9th, I think.
Is it December? Christ, I think. But early December, hopefully we'll either celebrating next week or in early December. So fingers crossed that will cap off the 3.5, 4 years of following the Union today.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm glad you brought up how you got involved in covering the team, because I just got to say, and I thought it was 2019. Maybe you're right, because to both of you guys, and Mike, of course, sadly he's not here, like you said, Jose, but all three of you guys have added so much the last couple of years to the whole mediascape of covering the Union, because I thought it was 2019, but I guess not, because I remember sitting in my car after games listening to Jim Curtin's press conference, and I remember hearing a English voice, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, there's somebody in England following the Philadelphia Union, and I know it's like a 5-hour difference because I have a buddy who manages a grassroots team over there, and so every time we talk, it's like, his sleep schedule's messed up, mine's messed up because we try to stay in contact. I'm like, dude, games don't get done until like 10 o'clock here, so it's going on 2, 3 o'clock over in England, and this guy's staying up covering the Union from England. It was the coolest thing ever, listening to you in the press conferences. And then Jose, like, I'm said this to you a couple times, and I'm not trying to toot your own horn, but I believe with you being there as much as you've been this season, like, you've added new life to the press box, especially with like social media, where you're posting just different media clips and everything, just more content. I feel like that's one thing that I've been critical about. The Union haven't taken advantage enough of getting Jim Curtin's press conference out there, or getting the players' voices out there. And you've done just that on social media. And what helps is nobody speaks Spanish in the press room. And now here you are, interviewing Jose Martinez, Jesus Bueno, Joaquin Torres, getting terrific answers from these guys, when it's just us asking questions. The translator is giving us like 5-word answers, and we're like, we know for sure that is not what he said. But yeah, all three of you guys have done a terrific job. So I just wanted to say kudos to you guys.
No, those are very, very kind words. And, we don't take this lightly. I think Dave's commitment to being up whenever he can to watch these games, or the following morning catching up, on a 5-minute video or whatever, 6-minute video, sort of encapsulating the entire match is to be commended for sure. But in terms of the work I've done, I've really sort of decided to take this on as a little bit more of more than a hobby per se. So it's been rewarding, and yes, you're right. I think it's been refreshing to maybe have someone there who can communicate with some of these coaches and some of these players, and maybe give them a voice. I think I was very clear with Dave and Mike when I said that I think the union is really lacking in really expressing what our Spanish speaking players say, how they feel, and certainly the community. I know that the brand new Twitter account, Fila FILA Union, is the Spanish official Spanish account of the Philadelphia Union. And that's great. That's a great step. But I think that there's just so much more that can be done. And I hope I'm adding some more to it versus the subtracting that I'm doing in terms of press box decorum, where I'm breaking every possible rule, cheering and standing up when we almost score. I felt so embarrassed, Dave. I was in the press box this last game, not this previous one against Queretaro, but the previous one. And I'm sitting the DC one, and I'm sitting there, and they almost score. And I think I jumped out of my chair, and Kyle was kind of like, "What the hell is this guy doing?" Just super confused. And I actually caught myself, and I thought, "I'm so sorry, guys. I apologize." Red Bull it was, sorry.
Got so excited, forgot what game it was, right?
Well, and what's even more funny, I think, to the story, and this is obviously super anecdotal, but sitting right next to the PR guy for the New York Red Bulls, acting this way, and he's like, "No, I get it, man. It's exciting. It's fun. I work for the club. You do it as a hobby." And he's like, "I do cheer on if you want." So it was, for what I add, maybe I subtract some too. So don't give me too much credit.
Fair play. But yeah, I mean, it's been great. And I think that's something that this club has lacked. And that's just consistent coverage. Of course, you got your OG writers, Tannenwald, DeGeorge, and Tansy, and those guys do terrific work. But as you know, working in social media with a team over in England, Dave, the social media landscape's growing. It's much more than written press. I mean, you see all the Twitter videos that teams are putting out. It's just quick little 5-second questions of players, and you're putting that content up. And it's kind of scary in a sense, where you look at all this AI stuff, where it's, the media landscape going to look like in 5 years. But I don't think there's anything wrong with people posting the kind of content you guys do in social media. And I think this is what you need to help engage your fan base. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think video content is so key to not just, I think the union as well are very, very good at the video content and sort of the social media content they produce. And, it helps bring fans closer to the team, closer to the players. And, it perhaps, it opens their eyes to sort of what they wouldn't usually see. And I think there was a couple of videos I've been a really big fan of the union producing is, I think the days in the life, they follow players around the training ground and typical day of training. I think one of my favourite ones was the Leon Flack one from, I think it was last season. I love that video. I love the video completely. It was just, you look at Leon Flack, you don't really have a good idea of the sort of person he is, but you then dive deeper. He seems like a joker, the class joker. Obviously loves winding people up, very popular with the team. You wouldn't get that, from you wouldn't get that sort of thought unless the team of thoughts, put the idea out. And it also shows how engaging the players are as well, and how willing they are to involve themselves to engage in that content. I think it's such an important thing of, as I mentioned, just bringing everything closer together. And it's also, again, I also love that, I think you sort of mentioned that the 5-second clips or, the minute-long videos of asking players, and Union, again, are very good at it, of being at the training ground and being like, oh, who's going to win the Women's World Cup, or who's going to join? Again, it allows to create interaction, it creates discussion, and it overall, the whole point is to create engagement for your social media channels. And it's something that the Union are very good at, even just with the social media posts, where they were very, very good at it during COVID, where they, took little subtle digs at the opposition teams that we beat every week, or, it's just, social media has become such an important part of not just sports in general, but like football media just adds the extra edge, and I think it's so important to just helping the game develop as well, because you see in the States the game like football, soccer isn't there yet in terms of your basketballs, baseball, American football, NFL. So I mean, again, seeing those sort of videos and seeing personalities, it catches people's attention. And hopefully, with Messi there as well, hopefully the MLS and football, soccer in America continue to grow and, hopefully overtake hockey in terms of popularity. And I think it's really going in the right direction. I think social media in football, soccer especially, is maybe the ticket to taking it to that next level.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. How would you say like players over in England are receptive of ideas like that? Are they shy and like, yeah, now we just want to, it's our job, we don't care about all this extra media BS? What's it like?
I think it's definitely a mix. I think some players definitely love the camera. They definitely love to be in front of it and engaging that sort of content. While others are a bit camera shy. Some people are sort of like, yeah, I don't really want to, engage in some of these videos. I think you get it as well with like press conferences. You'll probably notice it with the union. You get the same faces week in and week out. You don't. You rarely see like I think Leon Flack did it the other day, but I think I'm up in the first or press conference he's done in about 18 months. I think it's probably similar. I think you see it with a lot of clubs in England as well. They do similar content and but I think it depends as well the native tongue of some players. Perhaps some players are probably less receptive to do it if, for example, if they are playing in England, their English isn't as good as a British player. They're probably a bit hesitant to do it, which I can understand because either you don't want to come off the wrong way or you don't want to. But yeah, I think it's probably the same sort of mixture as it is in the States. I think there's players that are very camera shy, very very perhaps a bit more reserved, a bit quieter, a bit more conservative with the way that they like to present themselves. Whereas you do get your typical players that love to be in front of the camera, love to joke around, love to create that engaging content. So I think it's definitely very similar, very similar.
All right, Jose, I got a question for you. So, just either going into the mix zone, interviewing players, or going into the locker room. From my experiences, in my opinion, I think the players that give the best interviews are the players that are coming over from Europe. I think the homegrown players give you the least amount of content. They give you very quick answers. But talking to Kai Wagner, he has a lot to say. Mikael Uhre has answers that are well thought out. Who else? Jack Elliott. He could be better. Jake Glasses is a good one. But from my experience, I think those European players are a lot better because they have the media training. And when you're a homegrown player, you're coming up and you're not sure how to talk to the press. You're not sure how to answer certain questions where, okay, you got players that are coming from Europe. They've been professionals for 4 or 5 plus years, where these homegrown players are just getting their start.
Yeah, I think you're right, or you're onto something at the very least, right? You think about these homegrown players, Jack McGlynn, Sullivan, some of these other faces, Brandon Craig at the time. They're just got to remember they're still kids, right? I think of myself, maybe I'm the oldest in the room. I know Dave's age, Todd. I don't know your age, but I'm a 32-year-old, so I know I kind of like what a younger kid maybe talks like, and that's exactly what you get when you talk to them, and that's okay. It's fair. But I also wouldn't discount, and I think maybe, again, credit to the work that I'm doing and shamelessly patting my back, but don't discount the South American players. I think Jesus Bueno and Jose Martinez, these last, at least during this League's Cup, and certainly throughout the season as I've been more involved, have given some very thoughtful answers as well. So it's really interesting to see the dichotomy per se of the way that everybody answers and maybe just the lack of potentially being able to express what they're feeling. And frankly, if you're a homegrown player here at the Union, it's a hard job to fill, right? Because you look at the McKenzies, you look at the Aronson brothers, and it's a difficult thing to fill in for. And the expectations are just so high because this is the best academy in the country, versus maybe being a homegrown in Sacramento or Dallas or Austin, et cetera. So I don't blame the kids, though. I do agree with you that I wouldn't say they're not as interesting, but they're certainly not going to give me enough to really do much with an answer, right? Even like with Donovan a couple of games ago when he scored a goal, I asked him a question, and I kid you not, like, a sentence and a half. I asked him something along the lines of like, what is it like to practice with, all-star caliber players, and how do you stay motivated? And it was just like I try my best, like just like an answer like that, where, I thought it would be a little bit more fleshed out. And this is not a hit on Donovan. Obviously he got us through the next round, which I'm sure we'll talk about sooner rather than later, but nonetheless, I think you're onto something for sure.
I thought, sorry to add to that, I think he definitely, I mean, as you guys will see in the press comparison to the press conferences and, the Knicks zone, I think you definitely see, the players that are in the press conferences probably give more structured answers, or, perhaps similar answers to what the manager has said. I don't know if you guys have found that from very typically, I think, again, working in like media in England, like football media, like for a football club in England, very much, you will you typically brief the players on what you want them to say or how you want them to approach certain answers, which I don't think, which again, I might, I think it can somewhat dilute what's been said, especially if it's very repetitive in comparison to what the manager has said. But I think it's just about, giving the right responses. And I think perhaps the players that you speak to in those mixed zones, especially younger players who you typically, as you said, aren't media trained, I think they worry about saying the wrong thing. Maybe they don't want to say the wrong thing that could get them in trouble, which again probably explains why people give like two sentence answers. But I think it's just a case of, as sort of Todd alluded to, these European players have probably had like 4, 5, probably 6 years worth of like media training. Being sat in there like having like press like the media team giving them like structured ways of how to answer certain questions. And when you're 18, 19, it can also be really daunting standing in front of the cameras and in front of, a room of like 15 people after a game, all are waiting to ask you questions, especially after a defeat as well. I can imagine that can be quite daunting. Although typically after a defeat, you usually get an experienced head in. It'd probably be for the Union, it'd be like an Ale Bedoya, or you'd get a Gazdag or Jack Elliott. But I think, it can be especially daunting for younger players when you're going into a situation you don't really know. You sort of probably do go into a shell, and that's where that experience of actually doing it, is probably important, of actually putting them in those positions, especially after wins. But, also the media training as well, that they know, like, this is how you would respond to a sort of question if it's a difficult one. Or, do you know what I mean? I think it's definitely the press conferences are sort of more, you get sometimes better responses in press conferences as opposed to the mix zone, where perhaps players are caught off guard a bit. They're not as prepared, as opposed to, having a 2-minute chat beforehand with the press officer or media officer going, you'll probably be asked about this. So if you are, this is what you should say, or this is how you should sort of structure a response.
Do you think Chris Donovan's scared of my face or he was scared of me when I went and asked him that question? Is that what you're alluding to, Dave?
Well, no, I think perhaps he just wasn't either. I think it's, especially in those sort of situations, you don't know what's going to be asked. You're probably caught off guard of it as well. I think that sometimes people do something. It sounds weird. You do something, get lost for words, don't you? If you're not really expecting what you don't know what's going to be asked. I think.
Listen, I totally hear you, because I can tell that when I asked the New York Red Bull head coach about starting, benching, and cutting between JC, the Beastie Boys, and Billy Joel, he was absolutely taken back. He had no idea where the heck that it came from. So I totally get that too.
I think it's especially again, some people aren't good as like speaking off the top of their head when when they are thrust in that sort of situation. So I think, again, there's probably a host of different reasons, but I think especially when you're sat in a press conference, that's when you typically do get your best responses, as opposed to, speaking to each individual player in the mixed room where they haven't been briefed, or, they've got people coming at them with phones and stuff, left, right and centre, recording them. And I think that's probably my best thought as to how, perhaps why there's such a variance of, such detailed responses from players and managers in one setting as opposed to another.
I feel like a lot of time too, people are looking for that headline answer from the player, and so they're just trying to get the player to slip a little bit. It's like, all right, there we go. There's my headline for what I'm about to type up. And some of these players are a little bit too smart for that. They're like, we're not going to give you bulletin board material, and we'll hope that it's good news this Tuesday, right? And the players are all for talking Tuesday night, if, of course, we get approved, right, Jose? But the listeners, I'm sure, are like, all right, let's go ahead and move on from all this press talk, and let's hear some actual football talk. So let's go ahead and look at this Philadelphia Union versus Queretaro match that ended 2-1 for the Philadelphia Union. And before we speak about specific players from this game, I want to focus on the game itself. The first 20 minutes, I thought the Union were dominating this game. Good spacing between the center backs, unlike what we saw against the Red Bulls. A lot of space in the midfield for the Union's midfielders. And then after those 20 minutes, it seems like the Union let Queretaro back into the game. The Union kept getting pushed deeper in their own half. No pressure from the forwards. And they gave up the equalizer because of it. Glesnes was poor on the goal. Should have put more pressure on the attacker. Terrific finish. Nothing Andre Blake can do. But your guys' thoughts on that game, which, Chris Donovan, late here in that game. Jose, we'll start with you.
Yeah, really interesting. I think I can be the voice of knowledge for Querétaro because I watched them just as much as I did the Union this year for the Leagues Cup, having been in DC for their one game, obviously our home game. I watched their game against Tijuana as well. And I've been soaking in so much of this Leagues Cup. I know a lot of people love it or you hate it deeply, which obviously a lot of press members have been very open about that too. But watched plenty of Querétaro, especially that New England game. And frankly, I think Mauro Gurk, who is the head coach, who was really, really fiery after our match, which I'm sure as we progress through this conversation, we'll talk more about what happened in the later stages. But we, as the Philadelphia Union, absolutely let them sort of grow into the game, right? Yeah, we scored a 10th minute goal, but beyond that, I think we were just giving up too much of the possession and frankly, just keeping them alive, right? We had so many chances or a few chances that were key chances that had they gone in, maybe we shut this game down at halftime or shortly after halftime. So for Sepúlveda to score that goal against Glesnes, it was to me no surprise, right? I think they were growing into the game and eventually coming in and capitalizing on finally that one chance, which is exactly what happened against New England as well. So interesting to see sort of, how they played their game just like they did New England, right? Soaking in a lot of pressure and then ultimately figuring out a way. And the same way with Pumas when they were out in DC, soaking in a ton of pressure and then they just took one chance and that's all they did. And frankly, the New England goal was just similar, right? A cross on the right side coming in and the striker going in, for them a header, though you could argue that the New England keeper was sort of stranded in no man's land and that was sort of his fault. But here, there's nothing Blake could have done. It was more of a Glesnes mistake per se. I think kind of losing track of the player right behind his back. But ultimately, I have a deep heart for them. But sad to see Querétaro go. I'm actually kind of disappointed that the draw went this way. I was really growing. I got to know the PR guy being in DC. I got to know a couple of other guys just from the mixed zone over the last couple of games too. So it was an interesting match, but nonetheless, I'm just so glad we were able to figure it out, even if it took 100+ minute to get it done.
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the game, as someone that was doing the report for the website, it was one of the worst, such a boring game, apart from the goal in the first half, and anything happened. But I think the frustrating thing was, as you sort of mentioned, I mean, the Union for the first 10, 15, 20 minutes sort of were on top. They were trying to, they got the opening goal after 10 minutes. And so after 20 minutes, they just sort of looked like they settled for what they had and were happy and then let Querétaro dominate the ball. And again, after Querétaro didn't actually create anything, I think they just were putting balls in the box. The Union were dealing with them and it was fine. I think the Union were comfortable without doing anything, which I think we probably envisaged, but I thought, especially considering how they dominated the first game. They were so clinical, cutthroat with the way they took the chances and they were creating chances, being brave, shooting from distance. I was sort of hoping for a similar type of performance, but it just was never coming. I think the Union were hoping to catch Querétaro on the break, but the team was too stretched in terms of from where the defence was to the attack. And you saw that as the game sort of later went on. Of course, the goal went in. Jose alluded to it. Glesnes lost his man and nothing that you can do about the goal, but when you sit off for that long and you let the opposition have possession and you're happy to concede that at some point it could happen, and it did. And for a little while, you thought they're in trouble here, that the unthinkable could happen. And, sort of admittedly, I know, yes, before the goal, there were 2 substitutions that were made, which uh, probably didn't go down well with a lot of people. Bringing on Chris Donovan and Leon Clark and conceding 2 minutes later. Probably isn't the best look for Jim Curtin. But of course, he was probably vindicated with that decision in the 11th minute stoppage time. But I think the substitution for me that really changed it was Queretaro. I thought he was brilliant when he came on the pitch. He was willing to get on the ball. He was trying to make things happen. He was taking the ball out the field. And it was something that the Union had lacked all game. Someone that tried to take the game by the scruff of the neck and tried to make something happen. And that, to me, him, trying to create stuff sort of highlighted how stretched or how pinned back the team was, because whenever the Union did try and break, it was Chris Donovan trying to create something on his own, Torres trying to create something on his own. It was a very frustrating thing that obviously when Torres really started to get into things, he had a good couple of runs, getting the team up the pitch a bit more, and of course he got the red card. But yeah, for me, I think if Gazdag's still out on Tuesday night, obviously don't skip the rest of the review, but he should definitely be in consideration to start the game.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And right before Chris Donovan scored, don't forget, like you mentioned, Joaquin Torres won that free kick right at the edge of the box, gets a player sent off. Kai Wagner has a free kick, and it hits the post. Like, the Union could have won that with Kai Wagner, and it goes off the post. And the most unlikeliest of all heroes, again, steps up and makes a big play and puts the ball in the back of the net. And we'll talk about Chris Donovan here in a little bit. But you brought up exactly what Jim Curtin was talking about in his press conference, and you talked about Gazdag not being out. And Jim Curtin talked after the game saying the Union didn't create enough chances with both Gazdag and Bedoya out, and that the team's performance has to be better against Miami.
Yeah, look, I don't want to oversimplify things, but when you take away Alejandro, who's the king of playing the pass that leads to the pass, the assist, when you take away Daniel Gazdag, we're going to struggle to create chances. We just are. That's the way it is. Just like if you take, 2 top players off of LAFC or Monterrey or whoever, there's a big drop off. So we did it as a team. We kind of grinded. It wasn't pretty. Credit to Jesus for getting the goal. We needed a goal tonight from, some different, I'll just say different people, because, in Daniel's absence, we don't look quite the same. I think, Julian and Mikael had tough nights, and when they aren't clicking and on, everything that goes up there comes right back down our throat. And that was the way the game went. And they had a lot of possession. Again, didn't hurt us and create a ton of chances, but we lived a little dangerously and we're able to hold on and get a win. But it has to be better against Miami, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think everybody can agree to that the Union's performance, if they play that same exact way against Miami, they're going to get slaughtered in that game. And what we're here, Jim Curtin's game plan going into Miami here and a little bit later. And before we single out Mikael Uhre, because it's definitely going to come, and we're definitely going to play. Well, we won't play because there's no reason to play Jim Curtin's answer to my question about Mikael Uhre, because
Todd, can I ask you a question actually?
Yeah, go for it.
Todd, did you feel like Queretaro sort of fixed a lot of the mistakes that they made against us? I mean,
in the first game, right?
I think from the first game, I felt like their spacing was just so much different, maybe more compact in a way, and maybe that's what led to the change in possession. Though it was almost like a inflicting wound where the Union were just trying to sting. Of course, Jim talks about passing the ball right underneath the strikers or into the green zone that he often talks about, right? And just trying to do that when you don't have the man who is the king at it. I felt like maybe Queretaro just completely exploited that. I don't know if that's what you caught it. You have a much more tactical brain than I do.
I wouldn't say that, but I appreciate that. No, I think I alluded to it. The first 20 minutes, I think we could all see that. The Union absolutely dominated that game. Queretaro were giving the Union's midfielders a ton of space on the ball. They could lift their head, pick out a pass, see the whole field in front of them because nobody was putting pressure on the ball. And then as this game went on, you started to notice that Queretaro were shutting down the ball faster, just like New York Red Bulls. It wasn't the same kind of press that the Red Bulls imploded, but it wasn't as much time as the Union were having to start this game. And because of that, I wanted to see the fast, quick, one-time passing from Jose Martinez, from Jack McGlynn, from Jesus Bueno. And because if that would have happened, now you're going to open up that space because you have players pressing at the ball. And now you get these quick one-time passes in. And again, Daniel Gazag's great at doing that. You heard Jim Curtin talk about Bedoya being great at those entry balls into the green zone, like you talked about, Jose. But the Union don't do that. They just are okay with Queretaro having the ball. They're okay sitting back, and they're okay with just leading the game 1-0. And that's a credit to Queretaro for, okay, you mentioned again, Jose, they were okay having all the pressure go down to them because they were growing in confidence. All right, the Union score a goal in the first 10 minutes. They didn't create anything else, and that's exactly what Jim Curtin just said. And so the Union should have killed this game off, but they didn't. And I think part of that is because, all right, we beat them 5-1, and it's going to happen again. And Queretaro didn't lay down, and maybe that's poor on some mentality from some of these players.
Yeah, I just found that entire, after the 20 minutes, it just like completely was like a landslide change. And Dave, you mentioning Joaquin Torres being the guy who made the difference, a guy who I think we've been all so critical about, and cashing in a $290,000 paycheck every year, and not really coming on a whole lot. It was just sort of a, wow, this guy can actually do it outside of the spin cycle move that he put that guy in the home opener, right? So it's just so great to see him finally pop up again. But Todd, turning it over to you, I just wanted to kind of get your opinion there. Again, I really do think you're a much more tactical minded person than I am.
My thoughts on Joaquin Torres? Okay. Yeah, I mean, somebody needed to step up, and I think the whole reason why the Union went out to get Joaquin was they needed somebody to be El Senior-esque. Of course, nobody's going to be the 1v1 master that El Senior was, but they need somebody that's not afraid to take players on 1v1 because Union just don't have those players. You mentioned it earlier, Dave. In the second half, Chris Donovan's running down the left touchline, taking on two players, just trying to beat them with speed. You didn't see a lot of that from these players. They were kind of playing scared, I would say, in a sense, or maybe comfortable. Maybe Jim Curtin and the players would argue we weren't scared, but they were playing too comfortable. And Joaquin Torres, as soon as he comes into the field, he's going right down the field. He's taking players on 1v2, 2v1, 3v1. You know, he like you said, got that red card because he went forward. He attacked these players, and that's something maybe that caught the Queretaro players by surprise because so much of this game, the Union players weren't going at them like Joaquin Torres did. So I think, yes, give Joaquin Torres his flowers. They're good coming off the bench this time. Do I expect that to happen every single time he comes off the bench? Absolutely not. Dave?
No. I think, again, that was I think, obviously, Jose, you've obviously not just listened to the podcast, been on the podcast. My biggest issue with this Union team is, I think you've alluded to it, Todd, they've got no players that can not only attack players 1v1, but they haven't got a player that, can, especially when they're pinned in, and we've seen in games against like Atlanta earlier in the year, and even like that, I think the first hour against Chicago before they came back, they haven't got a player that, that can just get on the ball and flip the field. When they're pinned in deep, they can't get out, and we see it so often, they go long to Uhre and Carranza, the ball never sticks and it comes straight back at them, and it's just a repetitive cycle for 90 minutes, and you're hoping to, come out with a 0-0 draw. They haven't got that player. This team has lacked a player that, can get the team from point A to point B. You're pinned in deep. He can go on an amazing run. He can, take the ball 30, 40 yards, win a throw in, relieve the pressure. They haven't got that sort of player. And I've been calling out, not just for Joaquin Torres sort of player, but a wide player, a winger, someone that, has got that pace, who can dribble. And that is exactly what the way that Torres impacted the game on Friday night is exactly what I've been calling for. Someone that when the going is getting tougher, you're struggling to find an answer, he can create something, or he can offer that spark. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, the team somewhat perked up a bit when he came on. But I think just one of my other issues in the game on Friday night was it's just, getting players in the box and players, trying to attack the ball in the penalty area. I think we saw quite a few times the balls played back into the penalty area, balls were cut back, and there was no one in the vicinity of the area to try and be on the end of it. Like, you put it across in the box and you'd have towards the penalty spot, and Carranza's on the edge of the 6-yard box, and there was no one else around the penalty box. You're thinking, aren't we supposed to be attacking here? And you've got everyone else like 20 yards away from the plane. It's sort of like, it does frustrate me a bit, especially when, it's especially with the way that the system is played and utilised, when you don't have any width, or your fullbacks create the width. It typically does force you to have to push a striker out wide to try and be involved in the play to try and stretch things, and then it sort of limits what you can produce inside the penalty box. We've seen it so often. That was another frustrating thing, was just the end product and the penalty. I think if Mbizo gets on the end of that Kai Wagner cross in the first half, it's 2-0 and the probably game's out of sight. I think there was a one cut back towards the penalty spot where I think if anyone gets on the end of it, they score. And as you mentioned, the Kai Wagner free kick, Jack Elliott was probably half an inch away from poking that ball in the back of the net. It's just, having that ruthlessness and having that cutthroat and that cutting edge of, players being in the right spaces or in the right places to, get that crucial touch or get that crucial contact to put the ball in the back of the net or to create an opportunity. And that's what the team has not only lacked in that Queretaro game, but they've lacked probably in the last couple of games. They haven't really had that clinical edge that they actually showed in that first Queretaro game where they won 5-1. It's sort of just it's somewhat disappeared, and it's been quite concerning. I think attacking wise, the team hasn't had that edge, and obviously Jim's alluded to bringing Ale Bedoya back in, but for me personally, I think the team plays a lot worse with Ale Bedoya in the team than when he's not in the team. I think obviously Ali is a very heated topic on the Across the Pitch podcast. Someone that we've discussed at length in terms of the contingency plans to move on from him. But I feel like he is one of those players that does hold the team back when he's on the pitch. And to look ahead to Tuesday's game, I really do not want to see him anywhere near the starting lineup. And I don't know about you, Todd, but the only reason I would want them in the game is if the Union have a lead in the final 10 minutes and they're looking to shore things up and they're trying to pack the midfield and try and make Busquets' and Messi's life as difficult as possible. Ale Bedoya, it should not be anywhere near the starting lineup for a game, not just as big as this, but, considering how players have stepped up and how the team has looked with and without him, he shouldn't really be in consideration when you've got players like Bueno, Jack McGlynn, who are excelling and they're really offering something different, which we haven't actually seen.
Davis providing all the headline material you need.
Yeah, he is. And trust me, we will talk about Ale Bedoya. I had that exact thing you just brought up here. I want to bring that up here a little bit later on the show because I think it is a fair question, but I want to go back to a point you're saying. The Union play a ton of crosses into the box. They play it right there at that penalty area, hoping somebody can get on the end of it. And a lot of times we've seen the Union attackers not get on the ball. Same with the opposition center backs. And now the ball's going in the back post. Why is nobody making that back post run? Because you figure if they make that back post run, there's an easy tap in. And we've seen that too many times this season. I mean, it should be the fullback making that run. It should be the second striker making that run. And nobody's making that run. It's like you said, Carranza is the only one crashing into the box. Occasionally you'll get Gazdag crashing into the box. But no Gazdag this game. And now you only have one player in Carranza. Chris Donovan was the player that stepped up to get the game-winning goal because he does what all strikers should do, right? Crash into the box, let the ball come across to your strong foot. Now you have a striker's goal. It wasn't a terrific finish. It was a proper striker's goal because he did exactly what he's supposed to do. Crash the box, let the ball go across his body. Now you have a tap-in. And not enough players on this team do that. But I want to go back to that clip we played earlier about Jim Curtin. Something that he said that stood out to me was talking about Julian Carranza and Mikael Uhre. Everything that goes up there comes right back down our throats. And that's exactly what I was talking about. After the first 20 minutes, the Union were getting no press out of their forwards in Julian Carranza and Mikael Uhre. And I asked Jim Curtin after the game, and Jose shared.
I gotta mute myself.
Jose shared the clip on Twitter for people that haven't seen it. And there's no point in me playing the clip here on the podcast because it's a 2-word answer. And I asked, after strong praise, Jim Curtin gave Mikael, saying that, yeah, that's a good game from him. He's getting his confidence back. And so I asked, all right, well, how do you assess his performance tonight? And went into the thinking of bringing on Chris Donovan. And he legit gave me a 2-word answer saying, not good. And Jim isn't a manager that publicly bashes players. And I kid you not, like after he said not good, it was 10 seconds of nothing but silence, awkwardness in the press conference room because I didn't know how to follow that up because Jim doesn't bash players. Like, he caught me off guard. I'm like, oh, like, this is how you feel. Like, that's all you, like, that tells me everything I need to know, because Jim Curtin
Todd,
was
it's not even
fuming.
it's not even bashing players. It was almost like, and I'm not questioning like Jim's intentions, but like even coming after you in a way, right? Like, to not even say like, well, he could have played better, or like, yeah, it
Which he
wasn't his
usually
best
does,
game,
right?
but right, where it's like, hey, he could have played better, and maybe next game, or over the next couple of days we'll figure out what went wrong, something like that, right? Just like Dave, you talk about being press trained and being able to expand to not to not put folks like Todd into such a weird spot, because I was sitting here. It must have been like what, Todd, like 11 o'clock in the evening that day.
Yeah.
Well, probably even later, because I think I clocked out at like 2:30 after I submitted my press credentials for Miami. I was finishing up the Queretaro stuff and a Jim quote. And I was sitting here watching the press conference at 11, and your question went up, and I thought it was you. I wasn't quite sure. That the acoustics are just so bad in that press room for folks who are in there, and us at the time watching in. I gave my wife the night off. She went to Hershey for a spa day, so I stayed home so she could kind of relax after being away so much for Leagues Cup. And listening to that answer, I just giggled out loud that my dog woke up and she's like, "What's going on? Are we having fun? Like, what are we doing here?" Because the answer was just so unlike Jim, and frankly, I can't recall the last time he's answered like that. It was just so foreign to me that it like didn't register, and then I just started giggling. So, man, it put you in a tough spot for sure.
Yeah, it did, because it was packed in the press conference room. So you were obviously on Zoom. So I was just standing up in the back and everything. And Erica's like, all right, we'll go to Todd. And I was like, well, and that's what sucks, right? Is like, when you're one of the last people to get to ask a question and everything, you always got to come on hand with multiple questions. And I was like, you know what? Nobody's asked about Mikael Uhre. Everybody's, talking about happy times and everything. People are talking about Miami. I was like, let's go ahead and talk about our players' performance. And he says, not good. And I legit don't kid you not, that I'm just standing there after he says that. He's looking straight into my soul. Like, this guy wants to kill me. I'm just like shrugging, like, all right, fair question. Like, I don't even know how to follow that up. And after the press conference,
he stared at you, right?
Yeah.
He looked at you, because I kept on watching the clip over and over again. I'm thinking, he did not lay eyes off of Todd for like a solid 5-6 seconds. Like, he had a mission or something in mind, or just like dig into your eye holes and just go into your heart. Like, it was just such a weird stare at you.
How dare you ask me about Mikael Uhre? We played bad. Don't make me say this. And, you're right. If a player plays bad, he'll go into, all right, well, what they did well, or what they can do better. But he legit gives a 2-word answer. And I'm like, okay. And he walks by me after the press conference. I'm like, is he going to say something to me? Does not say anything to me at all. So I definitely take no offense. I think it's 100% a fair question after you just praised the player. And now you're taking off a player that you paid $1.8 million. You said you need a big game from him. You're taking him off, bringing on Chris Donovan, which, like you said, Dave, 2 minutes afterwards, the Union conceded a goal. And now I guess that works out because Chris gets the game-winning goal. But yeah, it's a strange one for me. Mikael's season that he's having, and I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, he had a couple half chances in the game against Queretaro. I was looking at stats today with the amount of games that players have played, and Mikael Uhre has played more games this season for the Union than he did last year. 33 games played this year, 30 games played last year, 2,113 minutes played so far for the Union, and 1,833 minutes played last year. 7 goals, 7 assists currently in all competitions. 13 goals, 7 assists last year. 7 games now in a row without a goal. 9 shots in his last 7 games. And of course, it's not all about scoring goals as a striker. You want to see that movement off the ball. You want to see stretching the back line, which he did against Red Bulls. But he did none of that against Queretaro. And I can't figure it out. Your guys' thoughts on Mikael's season so far?
For me, I think I've been mentioning this in the podcast, is his usage, his minutes. I think especially for a striker like Mikael, who is a very pacey striker, relies on his pace. You'd think that he would be best suited, especially later on in games, especially in tight games where the game's stretched, both teams are looking to score a winner. But Jim only plays him for an hour. So again, you sign the striker like Mikael, you put him on the designated player tag. He, for a striker, you think, okay, he gets paid the big bucks. He gets paid the money to score the late goals like Chris Donovan did to be in those positions. He's never on the field of play. He could score 2 goals in the game and it could be 2-2, and he would still be taken off after 65 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Like, Jim doesn't give him the full 90 minutes to really prove himself. And of course, when the game is like it was on Friday night, it was a very, very cagey match. Both that. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't many chances between either teams, despite kind of sort of dominating possession. Do you know what I mean? Now that's probably the one frustrating thing for me is the fact that perhaps he's lacked the opportunity to go the full 90 and have the chances that Chris Donovan and the Union do have later on in games because he's never on the pitch. And I know Jim can sit there and moan because he's again, yes, he should be producing in the minutes he's gotten, but sometimes, again, like just some strikers are known, like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, for example, they're known for coming on late in games or playing late into games and still being at 100% and scoring late goals and impacting games late. And Mikael never has opportunity. And I think that's my most frustrating thing is especially watching games this season where the Union have been chasing games and they need to get a goal to get level or look for a winner. And Jim's bringing off one of your highest earners, one of your, say, one of the most important players in the team, and bringing on, no disrespect, a Chris Donovan or a Queretaro try and change things up and sort of like, okay, but we're going to carry on crossing the ball into the box against 3 defenders against Julian Carranza, just for Julian Carranza. So like, well, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to me why you either Jim doesn't trust him. Okay, fair enough. If that's the case, he should be moved on if Jim doesn't trust him to go the full 90 minutes or doesn't trust him later on in the games. Or there's clearly something there with Jim's like tactical brain or substitution method where he always has to make a change in the hour, and Mikael's the one that has to suffer. But it's just for me, I don't think he's being used the right way.
Do you agree with that, Jose?
I think it's interesting when you have a player that you're paying this type of money. He takes a DP spot, right? Yeah, DP spot, playing 22 games and 7 goals, I think, for the season, not counting for Leagues Cup. I could be wrong, Todd. Maybe you have the stats in front of you, but it just seems like the production's not quite there. Though I think Jim is a big fan of stats that don't technically show up on a stat sheet, right? You talk about the pressure that Julian Carranza brings and the energy, effort, etc. But to Dave's point, I think subbing him out in the 65th minute when the man is honestly, having watched a lot of clips from Bromby when he was there, just pure diesel, right? His game is all about speed, not so much shiftiness or anything like that. He's no Joaquin Torres in twisting his hips. He's no Ilsinho in twisting hips and turning bodies around. He is just the north-south type of runner and trying to find a pass or honestly just being on a breakaway type of situation. And I just don't think that he gets that with the Philadelphia Union because I don't think that we have that type of situation, right? That type of assist for him to have. And it's difficult. When does this contract run out? Next year? This year? Does it run out or is it next year? I can't remember, but I wager to think that maybe, I don't know. It's difficult for me to think that he would be allotted a DP spot once again. I'm not commenting on whether he deserves it or not, but it's an interesting situation when you think about the other players who have maybe been pushing for a DP spot, and that of Kai Wagner, right? Who I think we can all agree has probably deserved it for quite some time. But Dave, I think you're spot on in terms of he's just unfortunately just not getting the chances, and I don't know if it's a trust issue or what it is between Jim and him, but or a fitness issue. I don't know. I just really don't know. So it's an interesting thing, and I think we're just fortunate to have gotten the goals from when I think we called it a trident, Dave. When one's not clicking, one of the other two is sort of picking up the slack, and that has sort of been the saving grace of this team. So hopefully when someone else goes down for a bit, hopefully it's not Julian Carranza, but if he goes down, maybe Mikael Uhre can pick up some of the slack. Who knows?
I think just to add on to that sort of the way the Union play, like, I don't know if you guys perhaps see it from home, but there's some games especially, well, being at the game, sorry, for me watching on TV, like, or through like the MLS broadcast, there were just so many opportunities in the games where perhaps the Union players that get their heads up when they do have the overload positions, the 3-on-2 or 3-on-3 and they're breaking. And I think Carranza is a very, very big suspect of that, of not getting their head up and looking at what's in front of them. He'll run with his head down and try and take on the man, lose the ball. And you will see at the corner of your screen or through the middle, Mikael will be making a dying run through the middle and thinking, play the ball, play the ball, play the ball. And instead, Carranza's either looked up and gone wide or he's gone backwards or something, or he's tried to take on the defender and lost the ball. I think there's definitely that connection and that connection issue there where perhaps they don't collect they're two individually, they're good players, but I don't know if they click as a partnership. They don't really seem to work well together as a partnership. I think Gazdag certainly somewhat unites them a bit with the way that he plays and what he's done for the team. But as a pair, I just don't know if they work best together. I think Carranza, again, is a very talented player, but I've said to Jose, I just don't, in terms of footballing brains, I don't know if he's got the best footballing brain of a player. Like you sort of see the way sometimes, that when he should be passing, he'll decide to carry on dribbling, or if he should be shooting, he'll pass, or with the weight of the passes he plays and things like that. It's just, Carranza's a very frustrating player, especially, when he typically is the player that when the Union do break and they try and have these overloads in positions going forward, when they catch oppositions out, he's the one that's typically on the ball going forward. And you're thinking if he just makes that one pass, whether it's to an overlapping Mbaizo or Wagner, or, if he finds Gazdag, or he sees the run of Uhre going beyond the defender, could score so many more goals. But again, it's just, that might be a connection or an issue between the two that they haven't really managed to click or work out. But yeah, for me, it's just frustrating seeing that perhaps Uhre is being wasted. Perhaps, I think, as Jose said, perhaps his talents don't suit the team, which it happens. It does happen. But I think, again, as Jose, you alluded to the extent, is it really worth a DP spot when you could probably get another player, be a midfielder or, attacking player that could better suit the team and its needs?
Yeah, exactly. And going back to your point, Jose, so Mikael's contract runs out after 2024 with a club option for the 2025 season. So he's here for 2 seasons. You would assume the Union pick up that option in 2025.
You
As they
think?
they typically pick up the option. So I think unless, Bromby says, yeah, we'll take Mikael back and the Union can find a deal. But yeah, Ernst Tanner is one that usually picks up the option, doesn't decline them.
So to that point, Todd, do you think Damian Lowe resigns with that option that he's got?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Damian Lowe specifically, but yeah. Okay, with that logic, it makes sense.
And so I hear everything you're saying, Dave, and I think maybe you both bring up a good point where the Union primarily play in that diamond system. And one of the strikers they want to get on the ball a lot. We saw that when Casper was here, his hold up play, give him as many touches as he can get. And then our Sergio Santos or Corey Burke, play them in behind. And that's what I think we see the Union try to do with Mikael Uhre. You talked about Julian Carranza not picking up his head and playing the ball in. Mikael Uhre made a terrific run into the box. I don't know if the cameras picked this up. Made a terrific run off the back of the center back. He's free in the box, and Julian Carranza tries to take the player on 1v1 instead of just passing across the 6-yard box, and now Mikael has a tap in. And that's happened way too many times. And that's part of the reason why I brought up the question 2 games ago to Jim. I see what Mikael's doing off the ball. He's making these runs, but his teammates aren't seeing that. And I see a lot of Sergio Santos' game in Mikael Uhre, and I think part of that is because that's what the Union asked for their second striker. They want a speedster. They don't want 2 players that are similar. They want somebody stretching that back line. And to that extent, all right, well, if you want something like that, do you really need to pay DP money for a striker that's just going to stretch the back line? Maybe not. And I do feel for Mikael. It's
teach Donovan to do that, right? For that type of money, for the money he's making, right?
You could, absolutely. So I mean, it's an interesting case. And a lot of people, bash Mikael online saying, "Oh, he's not a good player. He's not this. He's not that." And Jim Curtin does seem frustrated with Mikael. Maybe he seems frustrated with me asking the question. Maybe it's a mixture of both. But yeah, it definitely wasn't Mikael's greatest game, and maybe he's just not getting enough opportunities when he's always getting subbed out around the 60th minute. But we'll see. We'll see how he plays against Miami, because we'd assume that he gets a start if Julian Carranza can't go and the Union want to play 1 striker instead of 2, because they don't trust Quinn Sullivan or Chris Donovan to start with Mikael Uhre. Now you play with one. So it'll be interesting formation wise, but hoping once the regular season starts up that Ty Barbo can light a fire under both Julian and Mikael Uhre and maybe take some starting minutes away from them, or, just encourage them that, hey, look, your starting 11 spots not guaranteed. I want to move on, though, quickly to players that have been playing well. And this is actually a response you got, Jose, from Jim Curtin about Jesus Bueno. We all know that Jesus is having a fantastic Leagues Cup, scored his first goal this past match, has 3 assists, which is tied for second in the competition. Jim's been full of praise of Jesus the last couple of weeks, and that was no different Friday night when Jim was asked about his performance.
Yeah, he's become a starter for the group, and he's earned that. You earn that through time on the training field. You earn it in the performances in the games. And Jesus has been a revelation this year. Always has been a solid, steady player, but I think he's taken his game to another level. We asked him tonight in Daniel Gazdag's absence to, if the whatever side of the field we were building up, we wanted that weak side 8 to go into that 10 spot, to go into that hard space underneath the strikers. We did it good sometimes. Jesus did it good a few times, and I think on the goal, made a good deep run and arrived in the box, almost similar to how Daniel would get a goal, just being aggressive and running in the box. All of a sudden things pop to you and bounce to you. So you create your own luck in those instances. And I'm proud of Jesus. Again, a fighter. He's been excellent and really proud of him.
All right, so we'll talk about what you brought up, Dave, maybe 20 minutes ago about Ale Bedoya not starting, not being anywhere near this Inter Miami game. You heard Jim Curtin say at the beginning to Jose's question that he's a starter now. He's earned that right with his performances. And I said this on my podcast too. I don't know. I think you can't take away that starting spot from Jesus Bueno. He's earned it. And he's a fighter. He has a lot more energy. I think Ale Bedoya is a gritty player, but I think we can all admit he's lost a step. And Jim, I think, is to blame for some of that with running him into the ground too much the last couple of years. And I get part of it is he's a competitor. He wants to be out there playing every minute. But this team has shown that they can win without their captain out on the field. So, Jose, I know Dave already alluded to it earlier. We know how he feels about Bedoya starting going forward. Your thoughts on Bedoya starting?
Dave is basically taking what I've said over the last, I don't know, Dave, year and a half at this point, right? I think this team, and I always preface this by being very open and candid that I think we have to be thankful for what Alejandro has done for this city, what he has done for this team, and advancing our status, I think, as leaders of the pack in the Eastern Conference, let alone the entire MLS, right? And developing young talent in a way too. I think he's probably has had a hand in that in a way of, mentorship, et cetera. But to prefacing with that, it feels like it's, this is sort of the way to start moving away from him, right? And what, we have critics of the Leagues Cup. It's a cash grab. It's this, it's that. But it's given us playing time for players like Jesus Bueno to really shine and show what he's all about. And honestly, even through his short, albeit meaningful performances in the CCL, he showed a lot of promise. But then again, so did Perea. So it's just really good to finally start thinking beyond Bedoya, right? A 1-year deal after his injury in the Eastern Conference final and not playing in the final of the MLS Cup, if I recall. So it's to me, I'm just very happy to finally see Jim admit that, yeah, Bueno has earned it. And frankly, Bedoya brings something different. And right now, what he brings is towards the later stages of the match. So love it or leave it. That's what's going to happen. And I hope maybe that's what happens over the next, hopefully 2 games, right? Miami, and then a final for the Leagues Cup, or maybe hopefully not a 3rd place game, but certainly over the next 12 games as we finish out the season going into the playoffs and whoever we show up against. But this is sort of, I never expected for Jim to actually admit that, this is going to be his new role. So to me, it was sort of like, oh, wow, I guess I got some headline material here, and then I wasn't even looking for it. So it's comforting to again hear Jim finally say something like this, because I always felt like Bedoya was his kryptonite.
You want to allude any more of what you've said before, Dave?
Yeah, I just think again. I think you've mentioned it, Todd, a minute ago. Like he has definitely lost a step, and I think it's a shame because I mean, again, in another case, he has run him into the ground. I remember during the 2021 season where, I mean, it was definitely a discourse on social media was whether Ale Bedoya should not only be taken out of the team, whether he should be stripped of his captaincy because he played that poorly. It was during those summer months where I think the Union were pretty much playing every Saturday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And, they're going off and playing on the West Coast. They're playing in Florida. And Bedoya was playing 90 minutes every single game. He just looked so far behind the game. The team struggled so much with him in the team. But then last year, I thought he was a different player. He was brilliant last season. I thought Ale Bedoya last year was really good. And I think perhaps, again, I think he did deserve the 1 year contract at the end of the season because he did play very well. He contributed goals, he got assists. But and then I think it's a case of him being run into the ground. I think the injury he suffered in the Eastern Conference final has clearly caused him to lose a step. He isn't the same player. And you just watch games this year. He's so far off the pace. Like he's just having like an extra body out there, and it's no coincidence that not only have the Union played at their best when he's not in the team, but I mean, again, I think he got injured in the second or third game of the 10 or 11 game unbeaten run they went on. And, again, it's no coincidence that they can continue to extend that and play at the level that they did without him in the team. And you sort of saw when he did come back and how the level of performance dropped off with him in the team. Like, and Jesus Bueno just brings so much more energy into the midfield, and he's versatile as well. He can play in the holding role, and I think we've seen it a few times. He gives Jose Martinez more freedom to go off and do his own thing and go forward because he has the understanding of if he goes up, I'll sit. And again, we saw, especially in the Queretaro first game, the movement he had off the ball, the runs he was making from the field, the late runs, but something we haven't seen. And it added something different, added a different dynamic to the team that made it so clinical because it made the team a bit more dangerous. And we haven't seen that in a while from a player. So I think, again, no disrespect to Andy, he's been a brilliant servant. And to be honest, I think Jim Curtin is very much a typical manager where he says one thing in a press conference and does the complete opposite the next week. I think we've all seen that with squad rotation. We're going to move away from the diamond. So I'm not going to hold my breath about Bedoya, being a bench player or not being a starter because I still have a worry that he might play on Tuesday night and Jim will look at it as, well, I know Ali's done a job before at dealing with a team star player and helping on the side that that he started on. So, cue the I think LAFC draw last season with Carlos Vela. Jim went on for a while about how good Ale Bedoya was at helping shut down Carlos Vela. And that's my one worry that he might throw him straight into the fire and in the attempts of shutting down Messi and, because using his experience to help deal with Messi, but in reality, you probably need a fresher player who can keep up with him and, again, like a Martinez and Bueno, who isn't afraid to really leave a challenge on him. So, yeah, that's no disrespect to Ali. I think, again, a great servant, but I think he's past it now. And if he's going to play, it should be in a meaningless dead rubber game at the end of the season, or if you need to shore up a result with 10 minutes to go. But he's definitely lost a step or three. And
it almost feels like a third place game might be the best time. And I hope we don't have to be involved in the third place game. I'm not alluding that that's what I want, but it almost seems like that would be the best way to reintegrate him, right? Give him some time to sort of get caught up and pick up his wheels again against a team. Though, frankly, as you think about fiduciary duties, not that they have, stockholders or anything, but the Philadelphia Union would want to win the third place game in order to get a CONCACAF Champions Cup. I think that's the new term for it, a spot for next year. So there's a lot to play for the Philadelphia Union when it comes to monetary value. So I don't know. It'd be super, super interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Ale Bedoya going forward. But Jesus Bueno, he's on that spot like Jim Curtin said, and Um, this is the player I think the Union were hoping that they were getting when they signed him from Venezuela in 2021, I believe it was. And yeah, of course he
He
was
came along with
frustrated.
Davo,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
with
crazy
the
to think.
yeah, and of course, he just wasn't getting his opportunities last year. Played a lot of time with Union too, but is taking full advantage of them this season. And the last thing that I want to bring up is the Miami game, real quick. We can go ahead and talk about that very, very quickly. But maybe you guys have a lot of thoughts, and we'll be here for another hour. Hopefully not, but
I'm
we'll
so
see.
sorry, Todd. We just been chatting you up, man. I'm so
That's
sorry.
good. No, no, look. I was having a conversation, full disclosure, when I had Kyle and Jillian on the podcast, maybe like a month, two ago. And somebody told me, they're like, man, shut up. Just be the host. Let your guests do all the talking. So that's what I'm trying to do here tonight. So hopefully I'm doing a good job of actually hosting, asking the questions, and not giving too much of my thoughts, letting you guys do all the talking. So that's fine. Hopefully the listeners feel that way. But
No,
going
I totally get it, Todd, because I'm on the side texting you about some sources and some other stuff. So it just, there's so much going on right now. This is such an interesting time for the Philadelphia Union and Leagues Cup play. And as I think about next year, I'm really interested on how much changes, right? We've heard so much from the Mexican side in terms of their
the
displeasure,
referees.
I guess. Yeah, the referees, but also being away from home and whatnot, and Tata Martino being very loud and vocal of, they agreed to this, so they just got to play it, just go through it. What are the changes for next year? So this is such an interesting time for our league, a brand new tournament within the tournament per se. So it's just such it's uncharted territory. So it's a league that's what, 20 some years old, 25 years old. I can't even remember anymore, but it's just ever changing, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it definitely is awesome. And we'll see. What League's Cup looks like next year. I mean, hopefully some games get played down in Mexico. I think that's what those teams would definitely prefer. But I don't know. Maybe they complain about Cup so much that they protest coming back next year, and now MLS has to find new opponents. Maybe they'll invite the USL. Like that will ever happen, right? I mean, MLS basically wants to kill the US Open Cup, so I think they want to get as far away as possible from everything USL. But the Philadelphia Union and Inter Miami game, this is a game, in my opinion, that will forever be the biggest game ever in Philadelphia Union history. Hosting Leo Messi in a semifinals match with a CCL line on the spot. And I'm not sure, and I said this to you, Jose, before we started recording, I'm not sure it's Chester, Pennsylvania. I'm not sure if that's security staff. The parking attendants, we sure know, aren't ready for this game Tuesday night because they can't even get it right when it's just DC United and New York Red Bulls coming to town. And I'm not sure, honestly, if the players and the staff are up for this match, but this is going to be like nothing we've ever seen, nothing we will ever see again in Chester, Pennsylvania, with the world's greatest player stepping foot in Chester, Pennsylvania. Chester, Pennsylvania, of all places. And people joke, oh, can Messi do it on a cold and rainy night on a Tuesday night in Stoke? Well, it's supposed to rain, supposedly, Tuesday in Chester. So now the question becomes, can he do it in a warm and rainy night in Chester, Pennsylvania? So we shall see. This is what Jim Curtin had to say, his thoughts on preparing for Inter Miami and the business that Miami have taken care of that doesn't include Messi.
If you look at what Miami was able to do this transfer window, and it starts with the coach, by the way, to bring him in. I think all the dominoes fall into place after that. He's an incredible coach first. And now, even if you take Messi, the greatest player in the world, out of the window, and you look at what's come in and the money and the investment that they've made on players that aren't household names yet, that they're spending $6, $7, $8, $9 million for. It's a roster that is for a coach, difficult to prepare for sure. You can see how Jordi Alba and Busquets, it's almost like pickup soccer for them with Messi. They know when to give them the ball, where to give them the ball, and it's fun to watch. So they do pin you in, and then you can counterattack, and you better be clinical on your counters because they're going to score goals. That's the reality of things. We're going to obviously try to limit their chances as best we can, but we have to be ruthless on the counter attack against a Miami team that's, I'll just tell you right now, going to have more of the ball than we will. I can guarantee you that. I don't care whether we're home or away. That's just going to be how it is, and we're okay with that. But yeah, as you start to look at what Miami and their ownership group has done to make this happen, it's amazing. It's perfect for the league, and the way that Messi has lived up and actually almost done even more is what superstars do, right? Jordan, Messi, whoever it is, these are guys that have pressure on them every second of every day, and they still produce every time. So it's going to be an honor to play them, but once the whistle blows, our guys are going to give it their best, and I know we won't be scared. We'll be brave. And, in this building, I'll just say anything can happen. At Subaru Park, we've been pretty damn good over the last 50 games, and we know it'll be tough, but we look forward to the challenge.
Yeah, challenge.
Don't sell your tickets.
Going to be. Yeah, don't. Yeah. Well, I mean, have you checked SeatGeek and StubHub? As soon as the tickets went released this evening, they've all started popping up now. So.
Oh my gosh,
60,
that's
40,
unbelievable.
70-30, Miami Messi fans.
I think it's gonna be 70-30. I must admit, I'm holding strong. It's very tempting. My situation is I have 2 kids, and they have a lot of bills and whatnot that come along with them. So it's so tempting. But I have a cousin who's ready to just jump on and come along. And I think that's what's gonna happen. I totally get it though. But Todd, go on. I'm so sorry.
You're good. I was gonna ask Dave this. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. Would this ever fly in England, where tickets are getting resold for $500, $600 plus dollars? Would that be allowed?
No, I mean, you probably get it in the Premier League, but the lower levels, absolutely not. I think teams in England are very strict with what they do, like with ticketing. So say if my team, Gillingham, end up drawing out Manchester City or Manchester United in the FA Cup, what they do is they'd essentially, season ticket holders would get first rights, and I think they'd probably that'd be like 2 tickets or 4 tickets per season ticket holder. And then it would be, but they'd do like a cut-off point before the draw would be made, essentially saying like, if you haven't made a ticket account with the club before this date, you can't purchase a ticket for the game at all. So it stops people from, fans of the opposing team or people who just want to go see a certain player play, from buying tickets. And then it should be fans who go buying tickets, and typically you can't really sell the tickets on. You haven't really got a ticket master or SeatGeek. It'd have to be face to face or in person. So never really get that in England. I think it's definitely an American thing. I said to Jose, I think it'd be extremely poor. I understand the financial benefits it offers for a lot of people, but I think it'd be extremely poor, to see Subaru Park in a similar fashion, the way that FC Dallas Stadium was in the other week, when it just would not be a good look. And I know you've seen people like Elliott Shaw Park who are very, very fair with it when it comes to the union, saying like, "Oh, pick it to Lincoln Financial Field and get more people in the stadium." It's like, well, no, that's not how it works. You wouldn't sit there and say to the Eagles, if they were playing an NFC Championship game, "I'll take it to the biggest stadium and take it to Penn State and play it there because you can get an extra 40,000 fans." You wouldn't do that, would you? It's sort of like, and plus, I think again, it just comes with the fair weather people who don't understand how big Subaru Park and the atmosphere and the environment has played to the union's advantage, and not just the last season, but their success over the last 4 years has been instrumental. Like Subaru Park has played an instrumental part in their success over the last 4 years, and essentially have that dwindled away through glory hunters, Messi fans, fair weather people who just want to go see Messi and stuff. It would be damaging. Like, from a European perspective, it would be a damaging look for not just the union but the state of the MLS, is the fact that the stadium would be more full of fanboys and people that just want to sit there and see Messi as opposed to actually support the team. Because I guess from an English perspective, you'd never get that. In the UK, you'd never get a stadium full of people in Argentina shirts and Messi shirts, or say you're playing Manchester City, Gillingham play Man City, you wouldn't have half the stadium or 3/4 of the stadium full of Haaland shirts, De Bruyne shirts, and Man City shirts. you'd have your set away end and maybe all the home fans in the other end ready to watch the game. I think for me, I think it would leave a sour taste in my mouth if it comes to that and it's a 70-30, 75-25 split advantage of Miami on Tuesday. I'm hoping that Subaru Park is mostly bouncing for the Union and not,
Well, here's my
damage to
solution
Watford.
to that. If the Union and Jim Curtin are so afraid of Union fans selling the tickets, then maybe the club should reimburse those fans for the amount of money that they could get if they would resell the tickets. I mean, the club obviously is never going to do that, but they have enough money. They've sold enough Aronson Brothers where they can reimburse those people that already have tickets and say, we want to keep this all Philadelphia Union fans, less Messi and Miami fans. Here's money that you could have got if you sold those tickets. Go ahead, Dave.
I've got a solution. You offer the prospect if the fans sell their tickets for the semi-final, they don't get a ticket for the final. There you go.
That works too.
Again, it's another big game. I know people won't like that, but it's like, if you're not willing to sit there and watch the game on the Tuesday, why should you get a ticket on the Saturday if you sold the ticket and you gave one advantage? You see it in a lot of big clubs in England. But if you don't attend a Manchester United main culprit, if you don't attend a League Cup game, you get your membership revoked and stuff like that, and it is very strict with that, and it would probably prevent people selling on tickets. But I completely understand, the way the world is, not just in the UK, but like globally, like people do need the money, and if there's a big chance to make a big profit, then fair enough. If you have to do it, you have to do it. But I think if the Union are serious about making sure that Subaru Park is Philadelphia Union on Tuesday, if they put something like that in place, it might stop people from selling tickets. And again, for me, I think that perhaps is where the US sports scene differs from Europe, especially, and perhaps why they disrespect the game in the US isn't perhaps taken as seriously as when you do get, 20,000, 30,000 seater stadiums just full of people supporting one player as opposed to, going there to watch the actual team play. But with the actual fans there watching their team.
Agreed. Jose?
No, it's fascinating. I think that response is pretty good, though. I think that if that was the case, say we advance past Miami, that river end would be pretty empty, considering what I saw through SeatGeek in terms of people selling their tickets. And full transparency, I'm not even joking. I haven't even listed. I have two that I paid $60 or $70 for in section 140. I can't remember what the two seats are.
KSU is going to kill you.
What's that?
KSU is going to kill you if you sell.
And I wouldn't, and absolutely I wouldn't. I'd rather bring a person to be able to say I watched probably the best player to ever play. It's almost like a memory that you'll never ever forget. And frankly, Todd, I know you and I have sort of texted about this, but say a press credential does somehow come through for AAT Sports and I am able to go for free, I would bring two people. I wouldn't even sell a ticket. Frankly, this is a once potentially in a lifetime, or I guess you could say potentially twice in a lifetime, considering that Messi has a 2-year contract with Miami. I think it's unprecedented. So I truly do encourage people that they consider bringing someone else, give them the experience, give them the atmosphere, give them I don't even know. I'm actually kind of bummed that the Sons of Ben are not having a full tailgate prior to the game. And I get that most of them have full-time jobs and whatnot, but this is the one game where it would make sense if you want to grow your membership in a way to have a full tailgate with food and everything, open up at X time and what time. But also the Leagues Cup completely making it difficult for this club in terms of starting a game at 7 p.m. where, I drive from Pottstown. That's alone with no traffic, 50-minute drive. So I'm guessing a lot of people will have, Todd, you included, a long drive and will have to drive very, very early, as we discussed before the podcast. I'll probably be leaving 3:45 to get there early enough to not worry about traffic or be concerned whatsoever. So I think we're all in a very interesting position, and I'm not here to play moral judge whatsoever, but do what you got to do. But ultimately, do think about this as a once in a lifetime opportunity, though, next year can happen, but you never know. Maybe Messi's injured and he's out in Saudi Arabia being paid to advertise vacations. I don't know, but for what it's worth, take it 1 year at a time.
So going back to the clip that we played, I feel like forever ago, you think that's pretty much how this game is going to go, where Miami has a ton of possession, and the Union's only chances are going to be hitting on the counterattack, which is fine. You know, they're a typical counterattacking team, but they've not been the best scoring team the last couple games. DC United shut them down. Red Bull shut them down. Queretaro, I think, for the most part, shut them down. But they found ways to survive and advance, as Jim Curtin and the players keep saying every single week. I do worry if Julian Kranz is not able to go because of that hamstring injury that he suffered against Queretaro. That's a big loss right there. I know Jim Curtin said Daniel Gazdag should be able to go. Ale Bedoya should be able to play a part in this match. But I don't know, not having Julian Kranz, I think that's a huge blow, as big of a blow as missing Daniel Gazdag was last game. So I know Julian hasn't scored in a couple games, but you know he's been our most consistent scorer. That's not been from the penalty spot. Dave,
Yeah, I think again, if you don't have Carranza, you lose a lot of the game plan. I think we've seen how limited the Union can be when they they go with the Christmas tree or whatever. I think even then you sort of saw how much we struggled against. I think it was the Red Bulls when they didn't have Uhre up front. They put Gazdag out of position as a striker, and I don't know if that's a case of Jim overthinking things, maybe, you know. But I think again, the team plays at its best, especially when you've got two set out and out strikers, and Carranza and Uhre are both there. And even if perhaps their connections as a partnership or their combinations of partnership isn't there or the best, like they both have the attributes that do help the team succeed. Otherwise, got the pace to stretch your position, whereas Carranza is very much a player that likes to drop deep, get on the ball, and his hold up play in general is quite good. His link up play is good at times as well. And I think, as you sort of said, like if you do lose Carranza, you lose such an important part, not just because of the goals, but the way that he can help the team link up play and the connection he has built with Gazdag. If Gazdag does play, has again been a massive part of this team's success over the last 18 months. If you don't, that is probably the main concern. I think you don't really want to be going into a game like this at this magnitude of the players that you're going to be coming up against with any doubts of Chris Donovan or Quinn Sullivan up front. Although Quinn, in his cameos or the performances he has had in the last couple of months, he's looked very bright and looked very solid. But I think in this sort of game where you do treat it now as like a CONCACAF Champions League game or a big playoff game, this is it now. I think this is where, this is, no disrespect, this is the fight. This is essentially the equivalent of a final now. You're playing probably the best, again, the best, no doubt about it, the best player of all time, arguably the three best players to ever play in the MLS in the same team. So I think, again, this is the equivalent of the final. You want every single one of your best players out there on the field at the same time to give you the best chance of, not just being competitive, but going through to the final.
I agree. Jose, any final thoughts?
I think this team is unrecognizable from the team that beat us 2-0, and it took two outside of the box shots to beat Andre Blake, right? And one of them honestly being a worldie, and in terms of it being the second goal, I think was like a chest and then a volley type of goal to beat Andre Blake, which is absolutely just unbelievably rare. Very, very different team when you have Jordi Alba and you have Sergio Busquets and now obviously Lionel Messi, who completely transformed this team. Never mind the other moves that they've made and bringing two young South Americans as well. So I wonder what Jim's message is going to be, and we'll find out more tomorrow. I'm assuming at noon. We still haven't gotten, and I haven't logged in through the Leagues Cup Zoom scheduling, or Dave, as you would say, scheduling for press conferences. So I'm assuming noon tomorrow.
Yeah,
we'll find out more. 12, though. I don't know. When they say 12, it's sometimes like 12:15 or either 11:45, whatever. So we'll find out more about it, but I'm really interested to see what the message is in that locker room, right? We've seen Charlotte fall to it. I've watched that match over and over again the last couple of the last 48 hours, just maybe once or twice, and just watching players almost be starstruck in a way, right? And being just like not even following the man, like just completely stopping, right? And letting him do what he will. And that's, I don't think that's how Jose Martinez works or how a Glesnes works in terms of like, no. And Todd, am I allowed to swear? Okay, shit, just slide tackle the man or just press him, right? Like unbelievable that, someone like a Baranico out in Charlotte let this man just slide right through and ran into his other teammate. So it's just unbelievable. I honestly can't even describe what that would feel like being on the field or honestly in the press box watching it. I would just, again, I have no decorum in the press box. So for what it's worth, I would probably just stand up and be like, what the hell are you doing? So I wonder what Jim's message will be. And I think we'll learn more tomorrow, though, with Julian Carranza being potentially out, I think, Ty Baribo being the next up or whatever the answer is, though, I find it very hard, despite his performance and getting us through the next round, a Mikael Uhre and Donovan mix to get us through the next round. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. And that's what Ernst and company have decided that that's what this club needs. And yes, we have till September, I forget the date, to sign free agents, but that's not the Union way to sign free agents to build up this team. So I don't know. I'm holding my breath to learn more on Tuesday, but ultimately I really hope that our guys understand the situation, right? Recognize that we're going up against the best player to ever play this team. Whether it's, your opinion or not, that's fine. But it's someone who can just change a game on any second, a pass, a shot, etc., and acknowledge that. But also just don't give him too much respect. Just go ahead and play your game. Just don't let him have his will. It's going to be such an interesting game, and I'm excited to be with another, I'm assuming, a packed game despite people trying to sell their tickets.
Yeah, agreed. And I think for a lot of these players, this is going to be the most eyeballs by scouts that they've ever had on them. So, if you do a good job shutting down Messi, maybe you get bought in the wintertime. Well, I guess technically the summer transfer window is still open. So if somebody says, wow, you did that against Lionel Messi, we're bringing you in right now. And if the Union get a good enough offer, I don't care that the season's going on. If it's right for the player and club, they're going to let that player go. So you do hope that the players don't get too starstruck from this moment. But regardless, I'm looking forward to this game. Whether or not I attend it or not, we shall see. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming onto the podcast. And it's funny texting people before you guys came on, people that knew you guys would come on. They're like, yeah, I look forward to the 2-hour-long podcast. So we didn't quite get there, but close enough, right? So again, like I said about 30 minutes ago, hopefully I did a good job just hosting and not running my mouth, giving my opinion. But you guys offered so much, and you guys do a terrific job, whether it's Dave, you writing, Mike writing, you guys doing your podcast, Jose, you creating your content, especially the Spanish content that's been lacking severely the last couple years. You guys are a great welcome to the whole media space. And where can people follow you on social media?
Dave, you can go first.
I don't know if the handles show up in the obviously on the screen, but of course it's my Twitter is at Dave GFC Miller. That's the only social media platform I'm on. So if you want to follow me there for not just union stuff and retweet things related with Gillingham, Eagles, anything like that. If you want to interested in any of that, give me a follow.
Dave is an unbelievable writer. So if you're ever interested in reading recaps, Dave is your man to go to. In terms of me, what little I add to Mike and Dave comes in the terms of my ability to speak a second language. And you can find me at Jose R. Nunez. And Todd, is this your longest episode ever?
It's getting there. It's definitely getting there.
I'm so sorry.
We're 20 minutes away from 2 hours.
Lord, I'm so sorry, Todd.
Hey, I was warned that it might happen. I've listened to your podcast, so I feel like this is typical for you guys. You guys are like, oh, this is just typical Cross the Pitch podcast. So it's another day, right? And you guys record on Monday, so I guess you guys do it all again, right?
Just my nonsense. I'm so sorry. I know Dave is so good with words.
Yeah, Dave's
and so
probably like,
good
"What the
at-
hell are you laughing at over there?"
I
mean,
know he's Dave and Mike are just unbelievable, and frankly, I can't thank him enough. And
got to
Todd,
kick you
again,
out after this episode. Like, can't control yourself.
honestly, they could, and you know, I Todd, you've done such a great job and sort of keeping us together. So thank you for hosting, and thank you for hosting us, both of us, and Mike again. Wish he could be here, but unfortunately was not able to. So. We look forward to whatever happens on Tuesday, whether we're credentialed people or we're just fans. We're just really excited to see our union go on to the next round, hopefully, or at the very least, make it through a third place game. So someone will be there, whether it's Mike or myself. I know for me, it's much cheaper than Mike probably to make it to the third place game. But Todd, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you both for coming on. And I'm just sitting here thinking, man, if we would have had Mike on the show, we're definitely going over 2 hours. So thank you, Mike, for not coming onto the podcast and making this go even longer than what it has. But hopefully you guys are still listening, because a lot of great discussions, a lot of just great work. I mean, I've said it enough. I feel like now we're just going in circles, complimenting each other. But seriously, if you guys haven't checked out Across the Pitch, you guys are live every Monday, I believe, on YouTube. So you guys stream on Twitter too? Is that true?
Yeah, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook all live, and then
You guys got it all covered.
Yeah, all covered. And then podcasts uploaded to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, I believe, as well.
The only interesting difference is that if you're on YouTube or Facebook, I think, Dave, you're able to comment and we're able to address you. So that's the cool piece. We have a couple of honestly, at this point, it feels like 5 or 6 people who comment every single time we go live. And I was one of them. And honestly,
before you know it, you're going to take another one of those listeners and make it a 4-piece.
Let's hope not, because we already go for, whenever we record, Mike's always very quick to say, let's make this a 50-minute show. And then next thing we know, it's like an hour and a half. It's unbelievable. We just get on a roll. And I think people appreciate that. But I think that just comes with all the success that our Philadelphia Union have had, and people being happy and being engaged and being willing to listen to recaps and thoughts, etc., even from small fish like Dave, myself, and Mike. So ultimately, we can't be thankful enough for our listeners. And I'm sure, Todd, you feel the same way. Obviously, you've been doing it for a little bit longer than us, if not a lot longer than us. So it's an exciting time to be a Union fan. And who would have ever thought that Lionel Messi would have crashed into underneath the Commodore Barry Bridge to play a soccer game in Chester, Pennsylvania. It's unbelievable.
It is. But again, thank you guys so much for coming on. And if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow Free Kick Pod. Like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Free Kick Pod, where we do the goal breakdown videos. And follow on Twitter. I said that. Follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, rate and review. And I will be on the Battered Herons podcast Monday evening at 9 p.m. So hopefully you guys will listen to this podcast on Monday morning, if I can get it out in time. If not, then I guess that podcast would have already happened. So when you guys are done listening to this podcast, make sure you listen to the Battered Herons, and we'll talk all things Lionel Messi versus Philadelphia Union. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.